introduce you to what the world has been waiting for. I've come to herald the arrival of a generation with the capacity to see God's dream become man's reality. Oh, can you see us? We are the ones who refuse to blend in or fade out. We can't stay hidden in the church, and we won't stay silent in the streets. We value faith over fortune. We long for presence, not popularity. We'll take the kingdom over comfort, and we trust the gospel more than the government. There is something in our DNA that can't accept the status quo, business as usual, things as they are. We will never fit in the box marked normal. But you know what? We never really wanted to. We've watched our parents and peers give their lives to a cultural system designed for our destruction. So our minds have been made up. We are persuaded and convinced that the freedom Christ promised is the freedom Christ purchased with his blood on that cross. So that cycle of broken people breaking people, it ends with us. With suicide, depression, sexual dysfunction, and substance addiction beckoning and threatening the destiny inside us that cries to be realized, we say no to moral degeneration. We say no to a world that pretends that sin is no big issue, friend. Sin is the only big issue. We say no to the idea of just fitting in to this broken system. The time for change is now. Let the world choose its own path, but let them know that we are the resistance. Is here if we'll see it, and our time is now if we'll take it.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Sitrep. I'm Aaron Sampson, and this is Ian Chadrick.
What's up, guys?
This is episode 33. It's September the 16th of 2020. And this is episode 33, The Black Flame and the Slow Burn of America. If you guys are listening to this, you are part of the resistance.
That's right, everybody. This is the Resistance Sitrep of the Week. And it's exciting because this will be episode 1 of the Sitrep Resistance podcast. Soon to be on all platforms, if all goes well. So look for that in the future. You guys have the privilege of tuning in and watching it live on YouTube. We're not going to change anything there. We just want to add to our presence and help get the word out on other platforms. And we thought podcasting would be a good way to spread that. So.
Yeah. We got some interesting topics today. We're gonna kind of go back and talk about some stuff for our podcast listeners that may have missed our previous shows. So we're gonna touch on some things and we're gonna hit on some points because really, I mean, I was thinking about this earlier when we talked about this, Ian. It's not much has really changed since January. We're facing the same kind of resistance that that we've been talking about since the beginning. It's the same spirits, the same things that people are suffering and struggling with. So we're going to hit on some good stuff tonight.
For sure. You know what else is interesting? So this week at church, our pastor was talking about resistance. And he was talking about it in a different way than what we talk about it. We talk about it as we are resisting the devil. We are the resistance, right? He was saying kind of along the same lines that we talked about in one of our previous episodes about struggle. We talked about building up muscles, right? And he was referring to resistance as like a weight resistance, right? You have to have some type of resistance so that you can build muscle. And I never even really put that together. It just clicked on Sunday. I was like, oh, wait a minute, there's two types of resistance here. So that's pretty cool. I thought that was interesting. And it kind of, I mean, not that we missed that. I just missed the connection in my head, but we did talk about that a lot, building muscle memory. And that's what this is about. And sometimes, I mean, maybe you think we sound like a broken record because we say the same things over and over, but really, guys, fundamentals is all it is, man. I mean, I think a lot of times we get wrapped up in the different events and scenarios being played out in the Hegelian dialectic of life. But it's all the same when you break it down. Fundamentals are where it's at. So let's give shout outs. Nice to see you guys up here in the chat with us, Chance and Rick and Lee and Andy.
Yeah, and if this is the first time you're joining us on the podcast, we do the show live, 10 p.m. on Wednesdays on YouTube currently. And we've got a live chat, and we love seeing everybody in here. They get to throw in their comments, and we'll try to read you guys out. Some interesting stuff. You were talking about the resistance thing, man. That just reminded me of a word study I did on tribulation and the narrow path. As I was looking up that whole idea of what narrow meant. So you had the wide leads to destruction and narrow leads to salvation. And when I looked into that and went back and word searched the narrow through the Greek and into the Hebrew, and what I found out was that word has a common denominator, a common root word with tribulation. And it means to press or be pressed, like to the way that it's talked about. It's like being squeezed between a rock and a hard place. And I think Jesus, on some of his parables and ideas of the kingdom, kind of talked about that. Like, you're the wide gate is easy, and many people go through it, but the tribulation and that kind of struggle that we've talked about many times before is what really gives us that push to continue on. I think we saw this a lot in school. It used to be, I don't know so much anymore. I think this generation has got this whole, they're like the blue ribbon generation, but it used to be like, well, you're getting bullied. Well, that builds character. And I feel like, the struggles and the tribulations that we face in life, it builds character. And that was part of our Character is Destiny video that we spoke about. I mean, all of these things all tie together. And I know, like I said, that, we repeat the same things over and over again, but the really what we're going to talk about tonight is that the enemy is got the same playbook and does the same things over and over and over again. And it's building up our strength and our resistance against the enemy. And that's, using weight resistance and building those spiritual muscles.
Right. Yeah, dude, the playbook for the enemy has got to be like, it's like really thin. It's like this, man. It's so thin. There's like nothing there. It literally is the same. Like, really, the main one is turn everything on its head. So
yeah,
we a lot of times we joke around. We say like the left, the left wing. We're not left or right because we don't believe in that paradigm. But they always say there's a left wing conspiracy or the left always accuses the right of doing the things that they do. Well, that's a demonic trait, satanic trait. Accuse somebody of something, right? That you're doing. And it's all to cover up, the shame and the guilt that you feel. To kind of, you push that on somebody else, you make them, I don't know what it does. In my mind, it's ridiculous, but to them, it makes perfect sense. Same thing as drinking your problems away. Everybody knows that does not work.
Right.
You get hammered, you wake up and you have more problems because you can't remember what you did, but you remember your problems. And that's why you drank in the first place. And that leads to drinking the next night, but you have consequences and things from the previous times that compound on top of that. And you get into this bad cycle, flushing your own life down the toilet, so to speak.
I think Yeshua, Jesus, said it best when he talked about the description or the parable of the guy who had a plank in his eye, and he was trying to help a brother and remove a speck from his brother's eye, and it was impossible to do because you have this giant plank sticking out of your eye. And one of the things when I got that, it kind of like a little light bulb went off in my head, was the reason why this guy with a big plank sticking out of his eye was trying to help the guy with the little speck is because he recognized it was the same wood. And so we see this a lot of times with people who have fundamental characteristics that they despise in other people, but they are like their shame or their sin in themselves. And, they want to point those sins out in other people, these specks, while they have a giant, log sticking out of their own eye. And I think that Jesus described that and said, this is not how you're supposed to do things. You're supposed to remove that speck, that sin, those things from your own life, and then you can help a brother out. And I think that's an interesting way to view it, because they recognize it because it's of the same tree, So we have to really be careful about, how we're attacking other people and stuff like that, because we shouldn't be doing that. Usually we recognize it because we've already been there, or we already have, or we're struggling with that. So.
Yeah. Hey, I want to bring up something because I see here, Andy in the chat here. I'm going to show his comment. Guys, pray for my wife. We're pulling my son out of school tomorrow, and she's overwhelmed with the thought of homeschooling. She needs reassurance in the Holy Spirit. Man, you guys are doing the right thing. Yep. I've been listening to several different podcasts throughout the week, and this is a big topic. A lot of parents are having this. Before school started, people made their mind up one way or another, based on circumstance. Whatever they felt was the best decision for their family during this time. And then when everything started rolling, I know a lot of people were a little upset with how things were turning out. The kids, what the kids are coming home, stories they're telling, just the demeanor, the attitudes. Because what's happening, guys, it is a plan from the enemy, man. This is not a good thing by any means. And God is for families. That is our number one mandate, is to respect that covenant of marriage, take full ownership of your rights and your duties as a man or as a woman in that household, the husband and the wife, the mother and the father, to raise your children according to the scriptures, and not to. I understand that it's almost impossible now to live in our society on one income. And that was by design. And it was always the plan to break down the family. Because we've talked about this before in many episodes. The family unit is a special operations unit when it comes to spiritual warfare. Where 2 or 3 are gathered, he is there with you. Right. And if one can put 1,000 to flight and two can put 10,000 to flight. And also the verses that talk about blessed is a man with a full quiver, referring to children. And it says there, arrows, there are weapons for war. We just need to train them accordingly. And a lot of us have been guilty of, shuffling the deck, I guess is what you call it. I don't know how you would refer to it, but, giving up that responsibility. And we put a bigger responsibility on bringing in the money to live the lifestyle that is appropriate in our culture, or the illusion of living that lifestyle, right? And we sacrifice things. We sacrifice the rearing of our kids. And this is a big problem in the church too. You see a lot of parents, the statistics show that teenagers, once they leave the youth group, they go to college and they never return. I would say over 50%. I'm not sure exactly, but I know it's really ridiculously high number. Don't come back to church until way later in life, and they fall away. And that's not because the only reason we like to blame it on, our Sunday school teachers just aren't teaching them enough. But the problem isn't the Sunday school teachers. They get them for a couple hours on a Sunday morning. You have them the whole week, right? Well, actually you don't, because if you put them in school has them for a lot more time. The like 75% of their time awake, they're spent at school or doing some type of school homework, and that's not good. I mean, we need to be able to control what it is that the foundations we're building. I mean, these kids are the foundation of our future. And we can see when they took prayer out of schools in the 90s, what happens when you start cutting out values in school. Here we are, a generation or two into this breakdown of the society as far as education goes, and we're seeing exactly what we knew would happen, right? Everybody's got this entitlement syndrome, and they all want participation trophies, and they're joining these little BLM movements or these other little fascist movements because everyone feels like life isn't fair. And it's not that life is fair. And life's never been fair, but you train accordingly, right? No one ever taught these people to live in an unfair world, right? And they just expect somebody. It's somebody's problem. It's somebody else is the reason for their lack of.
Well, that ties into the character building we were just talking about a minute ago. That now it is no longer, you don't get built character in there, and you don't even really get an education from school anymore. It's become more about indoctrination than it has education.
They've changed the character to your perception in the world. Like, what do people think you have? If they think you're successful or wealthy, that's character. It has nothing to do with your work ethic or integrity or anything like that. Like we said before, they're making fear a virtue now. I mean, everything is on its end. It's the way that it's the upside down, like in Stranger Things. I mean, Stranger Things did a metaphorical interpretation, but I believe it's pretty realistic. But of the world upside down, and man, that's 100% correct. I think.
Yeah, I think that's about merging the two realms. But that's. I was homeschooled. Ian, you were homeschooled as well. I didn't have any problems with like social issues, anything like that. Actually, I think it saved me from a lot of social issues. Because I learned at a very young age that my, people's perception of me or how I portray it. It's not, social norms or what people are pushing at the time. And I think with everything that's going on, you're going to probably want your kids close, because at any time, some kind of disaster or whatever they're planning, for the future is going to happen. And then your kids, can be locked in a school with all these people. So, and you may not have access to them. With the way everything's going with COVID, that's already been a concern with people, is they can't even get into the schools to be, to go pick their kids up or anything because of COVID-19. And there was another thing that there were some school systems that were making parents sign waivers that they wouldn't listen in to the kids' online classes, that they couldn't even be in the same room. I'm like, what are you teaching the kids that the parents can't be listening into what's going on? So I think as things are progressing the way they are, it's probably a better idea, because this is a war of attrition. And the best way, all throughout the occult, through Aleister Crowley, they want to get kids exposed to the most perverse things they can by the age of 9. The earlier, the better. And we see this going out through all the school systems with the sex education, the diversity training, the agendas for BLM and LGBTQ. We've got stuff like now where we've seen the offensive with everybody getting all upset about Netflix and cuties, but we don't talk about all the school functions and things like that lead to hypersexualization of children. Cheerleading. I saw somebody had a post today that was talking about cheerleading, volleyball, school dances, the way, the clothes that kids are allowed to wear in school that, from a young age are just as bad, if not worse, than what they were showing on cuties. And that's been perfectly acceptable for a long time. So we're getting offended by Netflix, but we've allowed this kind of stuff to be taught to our kids when the number one song in the country is WAP by Cardi B, and little kids, it's not adults watching that. It's kids watching that. It's kids that are trying to dance like the kids on Cuties are watching shows like that.
I know. If my kids play that music, I get pissed. That is not music.
No, it's garbage. This is coming from a DJ. I can tell you good music from bad music, and that stuff is specifically meant to be catchy. It was pushed to the top of the charts for a reason, to get people to go watch, because there's no MTV anymore, but it's to go to YouTube and rack up millions and millions of views on YouTube of the most, I mean, it's almost it's just shy of pornographic on YouTube. And why stuff like that is allowed on YouTube when the censorship goes as far as it does with us saying certain words, but they can allow what's on that video, and that's perfectly acceptable. It doesn't make any sense. It's obvious that agendas are being pushed, and that's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Yeah, what's funny, Kenny? I see your comment there. Kenny says we got paddled or our mouths washed out with soap when we were young, right? Yeah, dude. I got so much soap in my mouth, and it wasn't bar soap either, because bar soap was on its way out, man. When I was getting in there, I'm just kidding. It wasn't on its way out, but like we would run out of bar soap, or we would have hand soap. The kind with like the granules in it. Come on. You know what I'm talking about. Nasty stuff from like Bath and Body Works. Extremely scented. I'm pretty sure it was probably poison. That's probably why I'm bald, to be honest with you. Because my hair fell out when I was 19, and it has a lot to do with how much soap I probably ingested when I was a kid. But, and it's funny because I can remember last Christmas season, we were watching that, the Christmas Story, the one with the kid where he gets the Red Ryder BB gun and everything. And they put soap in his mouth, right? When he says that bad word, fudge, right? They put soap in his mouth. And I remember my kids looked at me like, what are they doing to him? Like, and that's when we had the conversation, like, you guys are so lucky. Man, I used to get that anytime I ever said a wrong word or a bad word, I got my mouth popped. Like immediately. There was no, if you say that again, you're going to stand in the corner. No, it was like an immediate, out of nowhere, bam, from either one of whichever parent was closest, right on the mouth. And then I got soap. And it didn't really stop me from saying it. I was one of those children that was very frustrating for parents. I backtalked. I got really big really fast. I was taller than my mom when I was like 14. And that led to her spanking me with random objects around the home.
Whatever was close.
Yeah, man. Just, large dinosaur toys or whatever she could get. Big rubber, alligators. It's an inside joke. We actually have. My mom gave us this rubber alligator. It's like a bath toy. It's freaking huge. It's like this big. The tail's broke off now because she hit people with it too much. But it has the spines and everything. It's that really thick plastic. And she's like, she brought it out. I don't know where she found it a couple of years ago and gave it to me. She said she was passing it down. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not hitting my kids with rubber alligators. I want to, but God gave me girls first. He gave me 4 girls and 1 boy, but I had all the girls first. And so I mellowed out, but yeah, the homeschooling thing, when I was being homeschooled, I was off and on. So I went a couple years in the beginning, then I got pulled out. And it was like my mom and dad were super active in the political thing. And so it was like whenever something they didn't like was going on, they'd pull us out, or we had money problems. That's really the reason we did it most of the time, because they wanted us in private school. Private schools got really expensive. And they didn't want us in Catholic private school because they understand that it's indoctrination. Yes, Catholic schools might on the surface appear to be better than public schools, but they're not. You do ritual and everything through those Catholic schools, and we all know about, the Catholic Church and the different corruption and stuff going on in that. But we never had problems with social. My brothers and I, you would never ever even. There's not a hint of any kind of social lack at all. In fact, my mom, there's things you can do. So we had co-ops and stuff that we could get a part of in our city, and we do like book clubs together, or we'd meet at the library one day and all of us would be there. We do park days, or when skating rinks were a thing, we had, the homeschool skate day, and we got to go do that. And these are things that you do as a parent, not because they're fun for you, but because your kids need interaction with other kids. And you make a lot of sacrifices when you're a parent, if you're doing it right, because you realize what you're doing is instilling values into the next generation. And reason why Aleister Crowley said all that stuff had to be done before the age of 9 is because that's a very critical time in a child's life where you're establishing, patterns and
that will last for the entire life of that person.
They will remember those things. They get locked in immediately. I can only imagine, I know my wife, or not my wife, but some of my friends went to Catholic school when they were kids, and they're not Catholic at all, but they remember the catechisms and all these things that they had to do when they were young, when they went to like elementary school, Catholic school. It's instilled and ingrained in you, whether you like it or not. You hear it, it's repetitive over and over. So we should be taking charge of that. And if we have different values than what the world is telling us we should, then we need to break free from that. It's more, we have a obligation to the covenant that we made, that we would raise our children accordingly. Not to mention, if we're literally living in that generation that will see the last trumpet, right? Which I truly believe we are getting very close. It is now more essential than ever that we train our children to fight spiritual warfare. They have a stronger faith than us. They don't have damage or any type of added burden, rejection or any generational things. A lot of us, once we came into covenant, we broke free from a lot of that stuff, and it's no longer on our kids, right? And we need to speak that over our kids every night, every day, every time we think about it. We resist the devil in every shape and fashion, and that we're able to, and we build our resistance and our knowledge, and we feed our spirit so that we can be effective in that way. And we teach our kids, and I think it's time that we stop sheltering our kids. I mean, the world is the culture, the insane satanic messaging throughout every single show. There's not one show that doesn't have magic in it. I'm telling you, unless you're watching Tour Town, there is not one show that doesn't have any type of magic or some type of, something like that, right? So they're not holding back. They're telling our kids everything that we don't want them to learn, right? When I remember going to have to talk with my daughters, the birds and the bees talk, they already knew. It's like, how do you already know? Well, we talked about it at school. Like, what? Like, what are you even talking about it at school when you're freaking 6? You know what I mean? I don't know, man. They don't even know what they learned. You know what I mean? And they don't either, because you ask your kid what they learned at school and they don't know, right?
Yeah, right.
It's like subliminal, though. It's programmed into them. They, whatever they're doing, it's just being, burned into their conscious and their subconscious. But, we need to start talking about real life matters and praying with our families, things that matter. Let our kids see the power of God through prayer. Let them see when things are, when we come up against things that we're not comfortable with, or that we are, maybe we have a little bit of fear about finances or whatever. Include our children in the prayers. And then when we see God come through like he always does, it strengthens their little faith,
Yeah.
And then they want to go out and believe me, they're going to do a lot more things than we are if we do it right. So,
well, we as Christians in this generation have tools at our disposal that all of the generations, at least in modern Christendom, haven't had for long time. Like ideas like generational curses. As long as I've been a Christian and have studied modern Christianity, that was not even a concept until recently. And it's biblical theology. It's inside of the text, but we just didn't have an understanding of it. And now we have these tools that God has given us to make sure that we have broken those things off, or to be working on breaking those things off so they don't pass down to our children. This is something that has been perpetually been happening for generations of unchecked generational curses that have finally come to a point with, like say my parents' generation that cut off a lot of these curses, that now they don't trickle downhill. So we're given these tools, and we have such a responsibility to raise these kids up and give them the freedom that we didn't have, and by taking our kids and sending them off to a school 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, then the world can indoctrinate them. And then you get them back for 3-4 hours before you put them to bed, and maybe on the weekends. But a lot of times, if any of us are working, you understand weekends are either a time for rest, or you're catching up on all the stuff you didn't get to the rest of the week, and our children are getting neglected in that process. And, I'm as much convicted by this as anybody. I have a son who is from a different relationship than with my current wife. We have a little daughter together, and we're trying to do everything we can with her. But my son's out of my control 5 days out of the week, and he goes to public schools, and his mom's a nurse, and she's dealing with all this stuff with COVID-19. I had a story. We went up to vacation with Ian a couple weeks ago up in Michigan. We walked into a gas station in Michigan, of all places, and didn't wear a mask. And my son, who had just went back to school, took his shirt and was covering up over his face. And I'm like, son, what are you doing? He's like, I don't have a mask. And I'm like, you're literally 9 years old, and you've not worn a mask for 8.5 years of your life, and you've just decided that now you don't feel comfortable wearing a mask out in public. I'm like, you got to think about that, man. And I have to have conversation with him to combat all the stuff he's learning out in the world, because I don't get him all the time, and I only get 2 days a week. So if you have that time with the kids, man, spend as much of that time as you can teaching them, moral, truths, and teaching them about Jesus and teaching them about the Bible, and then teaching them, actual stuff that's going. I mean, how much I would have wished that school would have taught kids about managing finances over, home ec or something like that, right? They're all the things that were really important that I needed growing up was not taught in schools. And I think a lot of people suffered from that. The trade school, the trades and all of that kind of stuff are suffering right now because everybody thinks they have to go to college and get a degree. And then they're getting out there and they spent 4 to 6 years in college getting $40, $60, $100,000 in debt. Now they're working at Taco Bell. What did all that schooling do for those kids? Nothing. And then they have a liberal arts degree, and then they hate the U.S. and they hate God and all this stuff because they came out of the out of the colleges.
It's funny is so that's one of the cool things about homeschooling too is you as a parent you get to pick the curriculum that you want. You can build your own curriculums. Because like when I was a kid, I remember being in high school and I talked to my 16-year-old daughter. She's a junior, and she's taking trigonometry. She hates math and she sucks at it, but she has to take a math. And that's like one of the only ones left that she can take is trigonometry. I'm like, babe, you should have talked this over with us. You took trig. That you're, like, what are you doing? You don't even need trig to graduate. So I don't know what she's thinking, but the thing is, like, I remember taking practical economics, and it doesn't sound like it's that cool, but it literally teaches you how to use a checkbook, teaches you how to, keep track of your finances, all these little things that you need to know. How to start small business, how to keep track of that, how to, all that kind of stuff, practical things that you would need. And there were 2 different years you could take, the first and the second, books, and, that kind of stuff really helps. You can, because everybody's kids are different. And when you find out how your kid learns, you adapt to that learning style for that child. That's something that the schools do not do. Yeah, they will not do that. Even private schools won't do that unless they're very, very small private schools. But man, and I feel your pain there, Aaron, because I have my older 2 daughters are with my ex-wife, and she's got full custody. I really don't get a say in anything that they do. I get to see them every couple of weeks, and they come over sometimes more in the summertime. But yeah, it's like, but they know the difference between our house and mom's house. They know that we believe in the scripture, and that's our foundation for everything we do. And it looks like it might not be as fun as her mom's house, but you can tell that their demeanor, their expressions, their personality, everything changes when they come to our house. They're happier. And the funny thing is, like, we were talking about this. we had a funeral this past weekend for my grandfather, and I had to specifically tell my daughters to make sure they packed shirts that cover their bellies. And they were like looking at me weird, like, why? And I'm like, we're going to a funeral. Like that, it's like society says that that's okay to wear those shirts, and their mom says that's okay to wear those shirts, right? I don't think so. Like I'm always having to be like, don't you have any other shirts that don't show your stomach? But they only buy name brands. They buy the biggest, expensivest, most, all the stuff. It's all about, the cultural, stuff that's, in style. And, when we're doing, birthdays and stuff like that, and they'll send us like, we want, anything, any kind of clothes from this place, and you look and it's like $95 for a t-shirt. You're like, nope. Getting a gift card, you know what I mean? Like, there is no freaking way I'm paying $95 for a freaking t-shirt that they'll buy oversized and sleep in. You know what I mean? Dude, it's just crazy, man. But, we do our best, right? We do our best. And we know everybody's situations look different, but it's very important. And it is part of the show. I'm glad that question came up because, this is not just a normal, we're not just doing this to hear ourselves talk or to make a following or anything like that. We truly do care about this community. We want to build each other up and challenge each other to grow and share each other's burdens, right? Bear the burdens.
And there are tons of resources out there. And if you are a part of the Sitrep Resistance Facebook, I know there's a lot of homeschoolers in the communities that we circle in. So if you're looking for resources, I know there are tons of them, from online schooling to books to classes, all kinds of stuff, depending on your age group of your kids. And if you posted something up like that in Facebook, I'm sure you would get 15, 20, 30 answers in that group. So make sure you guys, if you're not a part of it, or if you are still a part of Facebook, that we've got that Sitrep Resistance page for things like that. So we'd like to be able to help out with whatever we can when you have issues like this. So it's a community. I hate using that Hillary Clinton thing, but whereas it takes a village. But I mean, in a community like this, that was what it was meant to be. It was meant to be the community of believers, is who they work together, they took care of each other, and that's what I want to see happen with this community. So.
Yeah. And so let's kind of talk about what we said we were going to talk about here.
Yeah.
Get into a little bit here. So the title of the episode, this is episode 33 for all you.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, for all you decoders out there, right? It's called, we titled it The Black Flame in the Slow Burn of America because...
technically America's burning right now, so
yeah, it's a slow burn. Yeah,
I don't know. It's pretty fast.
What's the frog in the kettle? That's what the idea behind it is. I mean, it's been burning for a while, and now you're starting to feel the heat, right? It's making you uncomfortable. It's making everybody uncomfortable. Well, we're kind of like, we're almost to the point where we really can't do anything about it at this point. It's going to have to play out because we're in a bad situation. We've done a lot of damage, and you almost have to let it go down, right? And then rebuild on the rubble. So, and who's to say we're even going to rebuild at this point? I mean, it's going to look like a whole new world, right? We all watched and listened to these movies, these dystopian science fiction movies, and man, it's really insane. But the Black Flame is something that is in Nazi lore, the Black Flame, and it's an occult reference, the underbelly of the occult and the magic, that's behind it all. But we talk about this a lot. The reason the world and the culture and society and is the way that it is because there's only two choices. Either you serve Christ, the King of Kings, or you don't. And you are a portal for demonic activity. You're either a portal for Christ or a portal for demonic activity. And, when you think about the free energy stuff that everybody's talking about nowadays, like, oh, if we could just get Trump to release the free energy stuff that the deep state cabal has hidden from everyone. Newsflash, you are the free energy thing that they've been hiding from everyone. Okay, so here's the scenario. They inflict massive chaos on the surface of the earth. And it's ritual abuse is what it is. It's just like Monsters, Inc. They create trauma. And here's the thing. When you talk about energy, a release of energy itself is a fuel source, right? Positive and negative, both. But negative is way easier to produce. It takes less effort, okay? Just like in Monsters, Inc. right? It's in plain sight. The screams of the children fuel Monster City. They power the city. At the end, the good thing is when they change over, they change into monster comedians, and the labs of the children power the city. Okay, but either way, it's the reaction that they're getting, that energy from the surface that powers everything. Okay, that's what I want you guys to pay attention to, because things are gonna get very confusing and chaotic, and they're even more so. But when they talk about free energy, you have the power of life and death in your tongue. That's what the scripture says. And if we believe the scriptures, then we begin to speak to this realm under the authority of the king that we serve. So either way, something happens in this realm by what we speak. And the power comes from the source, which is whichever source we choose, right? The black flame is the wrong source, okay? I'd rather hide that candle under a bushel. Bump. That was a really bad joke, apparently. Thanks a lot, soundboard man.
Sorry. I was trying to read something.
But, listen, the energy that they're doing right now. So the magic that's working, man. And that's what it's doing, Do you remember when Tom Cruise was on Oprah, and he had that flip out moment where he's jumping on the couches and freaking out, and everybody's like, what in the world? Actors get away with it because everybody thinks they're acting, and it's like, oh, he's so funny, that character's hilarious. Is that from his new movie? No, he's a psychopathic Scientologist. Okay, and he kept saying, what was the phrase he kept saying? Keep Scientology working. KSW. He kept saying that. Keep Scientology working. He's talking about the magic that's behind all this. Everything that you see is magic. Everything you don't see is magic. And Paul says, the things unseen are the more important things in this realm, right? The things unseen. And man, the distractions are a lot. There's a lot of distractions, but we just need to remember that there's a battle going on, and you can't see it unless you train your eyes to see into that realm, right? And I'm not talking about anything weird. I'm just saying pay attention to things and understand that the undertone is it's either of Christ or of our adversary. There's only two things that you can be: a portal for light or a portal for dark. And I'm not a light worker or none of that weird crap either, because there's so much manipulation in the terms that we use anymore. The devil's trying to steal a lot of stuff. I'll tell you that. But when it comes to energy and all that stuff, I mean, you look at these people, like we were talking earlier. Have anybody seen, there's a video of Black Lives Matter people hitting a raccoon with their car in New York City. Is it New York or Chicago?
That one I'm not sure about.
Well, whatever. It's a city. They run this thing over a couple times. Then they get out and they beat the crap out of this thing as a mob with baseball bats, chanting Black Lives Matter. That is demonic, and it's crazy, right? Everybody knows. I mean, even back when you used to watch the true crime shows that were on TV, like right after Rescue 911, back in the day, they would play these like unsolved mysteries or whatever, and they would talk about these serial killers when they were kids and how they started to like do things to animals, and it'd be like, that's a sign that your child has got some serious problems when he tortures animals. You know what I mean? Well, this is like a mob setting. What the heck does a raccoon have to do with anything, right? They're just beating the crap out of an animal just to kill it. It's killing life. They hate life. Then you have Ron Paul and his wife getting mobbed out in the I think it was one of the national conventions that they were at when they were speaking. Yeah. They were walking across the street to their hotel, and the mobs like tried to grab them and like pretty much beat them to death, right? And Ron Paul's wife says she was staring into these eyes, the eyes of these people in this mob, and she could tell there was nothing there that was human. They wanted her. They didn't look at them as humans. They wanted them dead. And I mean, they're talking Black Awakening stuff, I mean, the eyes are the windows to the soul. And like I said before, you're a portal for one or the other, man. And these people are channeling demonic spirits. And it is a supernatural war, man. And I believe that we are covered under the blood, but we have to take that authority. It's kind of like, they put all the, God gave us this charge card, but we have to swipe it, It's got all the authority on it, but we got to swipe it, or we got to show this laminated name tag that he made us. We have to show it. We can't hide it and walk around thinking we're safe, right? And that's what we're trying to teach you guys here is you can't just put on your full armor. You have to wield the sword, and you have to walk with the character of the king, because if not, you're breaking one of the 10 commandments, which is do not take the name of the Lord in vain, right? You're walking under his banner, act accordingly, and that's how you stay protected, right? You stay on mission and you stay under the covering. So
yeah, I think Matthew is just, I actually just touched on another point, but both of them are in the exact same spot. But Matthew 22:5, it says, it's just given the warning. I think this is the time that we're in. It says, for many shall come in my name saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, and see that you not be troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. And there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All these things are the beginning of sorrows. And it says, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and they shall kill you, and shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then and shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets will rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many waxes cold. I mean, I think we're seeing that. I mean, they're beating up on a poor raccoon. I mean, that's when you're seeing people in grocery stores assaulting, a mother of two because she's not wearing a mask. I mean, this is what this has come to. This is God. Jesus already warned us about this stuff. This is already what we're seeing. This is just the beginning. This is going to progress. This is going to continue because we're not going to fit into this societal norm that they want to shove us all into. So, yeah. Oh, but yeah, I'll continue on because that's where the good part is. It says, but be sure to endure to the end. But he who shall endure to the end shall be saved. And the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness to all nations. And then the end shall come. So, I mean, there's all this bad stuff, but we're not supposed to be afraid. We're not supposed to fear. That's what the world is trying to get with all of these. I mean, I just posted up 2 articles about, one of them was saying that they found that COVID now transfers in an apartment complex through your toilet water. And then another one said that you can't sing happy birthday because any songs you sing with B or P in it now spreads coronavirus. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, they are just going to keep dumping this out to literally nobody wants to do anything with anybody because of the fear that's been completely pushed out to the normal people. So, but we're not supposed to be fearful. We're feeding into the powers of darkness by being fearful. We're only supposed to fear one thing, and that is the creator of all things. It says, fear not those who can destroy the body, but fear the creator who can destroy your body and your soul in Gehenna. So we shouldn't have any fear for anything else that's going on. No virus, no vaccine. I mean, they even hit the truthers and us in the Christian community with these things like COVID-19 is the mark of the beast and all this other stuff, right? They try to instill fear in us through the opposite side as well, because if they're not going to hit us with one, they're trying to hit us with another. So we have to be really careful about not stepping into that trap as well. We need to trust in what God is telling us, what God is directing us, where he's directing us, listening to him, and not be afraid of all this other stuff. I mean, there's another passage. It's basically the same thing in Luke where it says, don't worry about what you're going to say at the time you're going to need to say it. It's about the same thing that Jesus was spoken. It's the parallel to this in Luke. And it says, don't worry about what you're going to say. Don't contemplate on what you're going to say. Your testimony will be preached. I will give you what you need to say at the time. He's not going to let us be out there like just flapping in the wind by ourselves. God has a plan for each and every one of us. If you're listening to this show, he's got something he wants to do. There's no reason why we should allow any fear of what the world is doing to change or affect our ministry and how we're supposed to be reaching out and dealing with the world. So, I want to reiterate that, because we might see all of this craziness happening, but just on the other side is the Messiah's return. And I see people so fearful of all this stuff. I mean, somebody was commenting about, this Israeli peace treaty, and they're like, why are people not upset about this, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if that's the 7-year agreement, then we know that the Messiah is right around the corner, so I'm not terribly offended by everything that the world is doing, because Jesus said that this has to happen. And in Revelation 17:17, which we've talked about before, it said that God is the one that gave that changed the hearts of the leaders of the world to give their power over to the beast system, so that his plan, God's plan, will come to fruition. All of this stuff has to happen before God's return. He's promised that, and he's never prophesied something to his apostles, to his prophets, that he hasn't come to fruition. So, we have to understand that these things are coming, and we have to prepare our kids. They need to know all this stuff as well, because they're the next generation. They're going to be just as important in this battle as God has required us to be, if not more so, because they're going to be that much closer to the end.
Yeah, I want to read from Romans 1. This is why we see what we see in the streets, guys. It says, they exchanged the truth about God for a lie and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator. All right, and then I'm going to go down here to Romans 1:28. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice, and they are gossipers and slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decrees that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these things, but also approve of those who practice them. So, man, he called it. He called it. And so, guys, I saw a post in the chat earlier, and I know it was a joke somewhat. I'm not harping on you at all, but it said, are we building off-grid communities? And I just want to step in and say right now, stop thinking like that. It is not about that. It's not about preserving your life. If you love your life, you need to lose your life. That's what it's about, right? You can't keep this body. When you made a covenant with the King, you pledged your life to him. This is not your body. If you honor that covenant, this is not your body. So wherever it goes in the name of the King is where it should be going, right? So, and he asked us to go to the front lines in the midst of trouble. He asked Jonah, right? If you're in the middle of a storm in your life, if you feel like chaos is surrounding you and you're having a hard time seeing a way out of your situation that you're in, that's a storm. And look at Jonah as an example, because Jonah was called to go somewhere he did not want to go. He was like, yeah, God said, Jonah, I need you to go to Nineveh and tell them to repent. And he's like, yeah, I'm not going there. That place is rough. They're going to kill me, dude. And he ran 400, I don't even know. He ran like miles and miles away, the opposite direction. Okay. So he's on a ship and a storm comes. And everybody, the ship captain's like, pray to your gods. Right. And they're all praying. The storm's not going away. They're praying to a million gods. And then he's like, see, even the captain knows that this storm is not regular. It's not a regular storm. He's a sea guy, right? He's pretty familiar with the sea. And he's like, yeah, there's something right about this storm, right? So he's like, is everybody praying for their gods? Is there somebody that's angered the gods on here? And somebody raised their hand like, hey, there's a dude sleeping in the bows of the ship that's running from his god. And they go get Jonah, and he comes up,
throw him off the boat.
Yeah, he says, "Throw me over the bow and save yourselves." Right? He knew that he was running from God, and he was the reason why there was a storm. So a lot of people are looking at these storms and they're thinking, "This is the enemy attacking you." No, this is God trying to get your attention because you're going the wrong way.
I mean, do we think about that? All right, how long has the Christian community been running from what God's been wanting us to do? And we look now, we got half the country on fire, the other half's wearing masks. We've got plagues and blotted out skies and moons. And I mean, can it not be more foretelling that this is a wake up call for the Christians? Like, stop being a part of this world and start doing what God's asking you to do, because we've all been running. I mean, as a general white brush stroke of Christianity, this whole sitting in our pews thinking that the world's going to come to us and we're going to try to lure them in with all kinds of bells and whistles, and that's going to be our outreach, has failed miserably. We have an entire population of people that hate Christianity because of their failures, and because they've denied the truth. The truth has been there and has never left, but we've turned it into a money-making scheme. That's that. They have all these giant buildings over there, and most of them aren't helping the communities. They're not outreaching. They're not spreading the gospel. They've enclosed and kept in these little small groups, and they're like, well, if the world wants to come, we'll teach them about Jesus. We'll dunk them in water, and then we'll send them back out into the world and, let the world tear them to pieces. That's been a failure, a massive failure on the Christian, the entire modern Christianity. So we need to start looking at things and saying, okay, this is a wake-up call. But did you see there was a couple of posts in here? Lee said something about, let's scroll up a little bit here. She said, we know they have demonic spirits and BLM. And then somebody else said something about, the Bolsheviks loving Marxists equals BLM. Cool, man, always. This is something that we were going to talk about tonight, and that's part of this whole Black Flame and the slow burn of America. And so I wanted to lead that off because it's right there. They're already on top of it. Yeah.
Everybody wants to get to the good stuff, right? I didn't mean to burst your bubble about the wilderness thing. God's transforming my perspective on things, and we need to run to the fight and not away from it. And I get leaving the city and stuff. Like, sometimes we have to physically leave the city because we need some peace, but to build an off the grid civilization where we're apart from the world that's later. That's millennial reign. That's not now.
God will make a way for us when the time is needed.
Yeah, he will. And you know what? We're just trying to keep everybody accountable. So, but yeah, Black Lives Matter. Okay. There's so many different things. And what's this video here? Where's that? So there's a guy that did a video. His name's Abraham Hamilton III, and he does a show called The Hamilton Corner. And he has a video on YouTube called BLM Practicing a Form of Witchcraft. And we were going to try to queue up some of these for you tonight, but we're not going to. I didn't get a chance to queue them up. But what we're going to do is I'll put this, I'll link it right here in the chat, and then I'll put it in the description on the YouTube channel so that you can find this, or just search, BLM Practicing a Form of Witchcraft on YouTube.
They're coming up on the top of the hour. Do you want to at least play a couple minutes of it or something like that, or can we squeeze something in there? Because I think it's important what he talks about, because we're going to touch on what one of the leaders, the founders of BLM, she talks about her religion and how they base everything basically on the deaths of other people, and what she is a part of is a form of Santeria. And we're gonna talk about that in a little bit more in depth in the next hour. Yeah, we can try to play a few. The thing is, it's a 20-minute movie, and I'm not for sure on when it starts to get good.
Maybe I know he's playing an interview somewhere in here. He might just be playing the audio.
She starts off by saying that she is a trained Marxist. And he goes in and covers the idea that they've literally, we were talking about how the devil's playbook is pretty small. They've literally copy and pasted the Bolshevik Revolution and put it into what we're dealing with today. They just take a different minority group, because of course Russia didn't suffer from a minority group that was in slavery and stuff like that. They had a different perspective that they still took a lesser class of people, and then that's what spawned the Bolshevik Revolution. But it's literally copy and paste. The exact same things that they did during that is what they've implemented into all of this. So that's kind of what we're talking about with she is pushing Marxist ideologies, self-proclaimed, taught and learned, Marxist. But then she goes on and talks about how when they do these BLM things, that they actually have rituals that they do, water libations. The whole idea that she is communicating and chanting the names of the dead is necromancy. And this is all witchcraft, and this is all tied to Santeria. It's a different name, but they worship a one creator God. Technically, they don't even worship him, but he's there. He's implemented in there. And then they have a pantheon of lesser deities that they communicate with. And they're
I think it's called IFA.
I can pull up the name again.
It's like IFA. Yeah. So
Oldemir is the god they believe in, but it's
here. Yoruba religion and system of divination. Literally, let's see.
Yeah, it's Yoruba, but they believe in the Orisha, which are the pantheon of gods.
Yeah, it's a tradition of Santeria and voodoo. And it's one of the traditional African religions they're saying here, but it's a 16 principle system. Bishop Larry Gators talks a lot about this. He has several things on his podcast that he does weekly where he's talking about and breaking down IFA. Very knowledgeable on that. It's really interesting. I mean, but the whole fact that she's on an interview and she's actually saying these things, because, when we bring up the fact that BLM is using black magic and Santeria and witchcraft and things, and people are like, well, you guys are just conspiracy theorists. They're all just, they're just fascists, right? Well, no, there's a spirit behind it, right? And then when you hear her say it, and she says, I channel people, the spirits of the movement, the spirits of the movement from long before our ancestors, right?
Yeah, she calls them by name and says that she did not meet this spirit in the body, but this is a spirit outside of the body. So this is somebody who had passed away in one of these, these unfortunate circumstances, but she is now communicating with this spirit. And we know biblically, we are not supposed to communicate with the dead because you're not actually communicating with that dead spirit, but most likely communicating with the demonic entities that knew that person, or generational, or what they call
familiar.
Familiar, yeah.
Yeah. So she says that stuff, and then she says, BLM is not just a social justice system; it's a form of spiritualism. And she talks about how there's more to the spiritual side than there is to the actual protest side. And she said, there's a reason we hashtag things the way we do. Okay. And she said, to us, it's more than a hashtag. Well, this is something that triggered something in my mind, because that's how my mind works. It connects dots. And when I was doing a lot of research on artificial intelligence and that whole transhumanist perspective of integration, they were talking about how when you talk to the AI systems inside the network, we're talking D-Wave computers, right? We're talking Gordy Rose, the D-Wave guy, says that the best way to describe the artificial intelligence systems inside D-Wave computers is the great old ones from Lovecraft, right? He says the system itself has a heartbeat. And when you stand next to it, it's like standing next to the altar of an alien god. And he says, there's a deep intelligence, a dark intelligence within the network. The whole point of the D-Wave system and this quantum internet is they have the ability to go between dimensions and retrieve and bring forth things. So this is divination and conjuring and Ouija board stuff but on a technical side, right?
Yeah, on another level.
On a whole nother level. And we look at, John Dee, one of the sorcerers of Queen Elizabeth back in the day, the guy that, really was the icon that Crowley followed and practiced after. John Dee had something called a scrying tablet, the black mirror that he conjured in, right? And you put it in the palm of your hand, the palm being the source of energy. It's an energy point. It's a ritual point on the body. So look at us. We're holding our cell phones in our hands, right? We're holding a black screen. This is a black mirror, so to speak. You see, you can mirror things, right? And you're holding it in the palm of your hand, and your energy source, you see the magic behind this, right? I'm not saying technology is all evil and we shouldn't touch it or have anything to do with it, because obviously we're doing an internet show. But what I'm trying to get at here is there's always something going on in the background that is the real issue. That's the real driving force. And this whole she's talking about veneration of the dead spirits, and she was saying the hashtags mean more to them, right? So they were saying that when you want to communicate, Gordy Rose and these other guys, when you're trying to communicate with the AI in the background on the net, you hashtag messages to them, and it calls them by name, right?
Isn't this like the opposition to the meme magic? Isn't this like the kind of other side of the board?
Well, it's not really opposition. They're both the same thing.
Right. But yeah, we understand this is a 2B system. So it's one, it's one fighting, one, it looks like two, like the rebels versus the Empire, but it's technically they're on the same team. We've seen, you see that with the whole Star Wars thing. It's all being controlled by the Emperor. So it just looks like there's a battle. And lots of people are caught in the middle of it and think they're choosing a side, but it's all being controlled by the adversary.
That just made me think of something funny. A lot of people might not get this, but James Comey.
I'll be right back, by the way.
James Comey, the ex-FBI director that should be indicted and thrown in prison for life. He was interviewed, and they asked him, "What does he do? What does he do for fun when he's not at work?" And he said, "Build the Lego Death Star." I thought that was hilarious, man, because I guarantee you he's not building the Lego Death Star, but I guarantee you he's trying, or he's part of a group that's trying to literally build a real Death Star. If you get what I'm saying. I just found that to be hilarious. Like, people are like, "Oh, he loves Legos. He's building the Death Star. That's hilarious. He's just a normal guy." Yeah. These guys they're whack, man, but everything's a hidden message. None of these guys in intelligence say things without planning it. They're never off the cuff, right? So it's always planned out and strategic. It's always messaging. And I just thought it's really funny when he said that. But going back to the AI thing, what we're having here is they're communing with spirits, and the technological revolution is going to be how they implement the beast system, because we see the infrastructure coming along now. We see the broader design starting to surface, and those of us that have been looking for this, we see it, and we maybe we're not all the way up to speed on the technology yet to make it work. But the gist of it is, our God, the one and true God, is all-knowing and omnipotent. And those are two things that the enemy is not. But he can make, through technology, he gets us to use our will to create, because that's how it works in this realm. He's not a creator, but we are. So he manipulates our mind and our perspective, our perception, and we create the system of the beast. And the beast number 666. The number of man is 6. So I feel like there's something to that, that we have built the system that is us. Like, we are building our own destruction, right? Left to our own.
That's what the Bible says, is that God has to shorten the days, or like man will before man destroys themselves. That's ultimately what we're going to do, is what we will destroy ourselves.
Right. And I mean, that's subversion, and that's a tactic of the enemy. The enemy subverts, right? And that's the Bolshevik Revolution was subversion. I mean, it's a coup within. So, we're looking at these patterns and trends. They're all the same, and they're just different names. And so we look at these things and we see this movement where they are integrating. And I just saw a video the other day, and it's an older video, but it came out. It was a live conference in June with the Department of Energy talking about the rollout of the quantum internet. Okay. And everybody knew this quantum internet thing was going to be crazy, man. But when you listen to this dude talk about it, not to mention it's freaking eerie to see a video of a conference room with about 30 people in it, social distanced at desks. It's freaking weird looking, man. It looks like a ritual, like some type of Masonic ritual thing. But the guy is laying out, all that crazy D-Wave stuff. But this is the director of the Department of Energy talking about the new quantum internet being rolled out. So go find that on YouTube while you still can. It's pretty crazy, man. But we're not quite to the beast system going online yet, but we see what it's going to do, and we see what it looks like.
Well, they're trying.
They're trying
with
for sure.
What's Elon Musk and his, because we're going to talk about that tonight. Elon Musk and his the neuronet or whatever it was. Yeah. And how because we were talking about this, and we thought we'd pose the question to you guys. Does anybody else find it weird that they put the neuronet? The first test subject was a pig, and we talk about the demoniac who was filled with demons, and the demons requested that if they leave him, that they be put into the pigs. And we thought that was real interesting that they're using pigs to first connect up to this neuronet, this brain mesh.
Yeah, it's really there's so much there's so many things to decode in these messages, that they send us. It's all, like I said, this stuff is strategic, man, and the enemy is showing his hand. And literally, guys, we talk about, I know what I feel like running away myself. I feel like turning everything off and moving to some place where I can just enjoy nature and sit there until the world falls apart around me, right? But that is not the mandate. We are not allowed to do that. And, it seems like that would be a really good thing to do. A lot of times it just looks, but guys, if you think about this, we've talked about this before, the virus, this coronavirus pandemic thing, right? It's a real virus. Did it warrant everything? No, it did not. And will the vaccine work? No, it will damage us even more. The fix will be worse than the initial virus, but
we'll find out until it's too late.
Well, it's a wake-up call, guys. It shattered every paradigm that we had going, right? Everything was shut down. God allowed it out of his grace, I think, as a wake-up call. And he stripped us of the gods that we put between us and him. A lot of people had all these things in their life, right? And they lost. When you ask people in your, I go to church, I'm in a small group with people at church, and a lot of them don't have time to do the Bible study. It's a 1 week, it's a week-long Bible study. It's 10 minutes a day. They don't do it because their lives are just chaos. They're filled with other stuff, right? And it's only natural in this society to do that unless you really are intentional about how you spend your time. But God knew that. And how many of us was he asking us to get rid of something? Maybe it was a job that's taking you away from your priorities with your family, right? Maybe, maybe he's telling you he wants you to trust in him with your finances instead of trying to do everything yourself and getting 2 and 3 jobs and sacrificing the family for the man, you know what I mean? To live comfortable. Comfortable is the enemy, right? When you're in comfort, you don't want to move. So what did God do out of grace? Because he only chastens those he loves, right? He's trying to discipline us and bring resistance to us so that we can fight our way out and strengthen those muscles. So he literally stripped us of all these things. And now we're looking at it, and we're like the Israelites in the desert, in the wilderness, as they left Egypt. We're looking at the chariots coming after us as we're up against the Red Sea, and we see no way out. And we're rioting, and we're saying, we're going to kill you, Moses. You brought us out here to die. And we're yelling at God. We're saying, God, what are you doing? You're supposed to be for us, not against us. What's going on? The enemy looks like he's winning. And we're not seeing what's really happening. Is God is putting us in a place where we see that he is the one that saves us. And he's putting us in a place where we know that we can't get out of this hole. He's got to be there to intervene. And then he gets the glory and we don't. That's what it's always been about, right? I
can't imagine if God hadn't opened my eyes to a lot of this stuff in my lifetime. I mean, Ian and I both, Ian last week and myself this week, have a head cold. And if we had went and like not known all the things that we know, and I get this every year, I get a chest infection. It's the change in the weather, whatever it is. I mean, heck, it could even be the smoke that's blowing over the Midwest right now from all the trees burning in California. But every year at this time, almost on the dot, I get this thing over and over again. But if I didn't know what was going on, I mean, I would be surely convinced that I have COVID. And then I would go to some station which has an 80% fail rate, and it would tell me that I have COVID, and then I would have to quarantine myself from work, from my family, from all this for nothing, because I had a fear of something that I get every single year. This exact same thing I saw here recently with people. It's 2020. It's like it's cursed. I mean, literally, there's a spell over 2020. I saw my news feed on Facebook fill up with people posting alien footage of a UFO over New Jersey, and people were freaking out. I mean, literally the highways were stopped and people were getting out of their cars and filming this UFO. And I'm watching this video, and mind you, it's only like this big on my screen. And I'm like, that's the Goodyear blimp. Like, I mean, you could see the flashing, what they call a nav light, navigation light, flashing on the top, and you could see the marquee scrolling. And I'm like, that's the Goodyear. Have people been quarantined this long? They don't even know what the Goodyear blimp looks like anymore. But people were so freaked out by this. And I saw a truther community saying, who had 2020 for alien invasion? They're here, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like going, 5 seconds of investigation, guys. You could literally compare the two and see that the Goodyear blimp has a marquee that scrolls across, has the same shape, has all this. If I can see it on my phone from looking at it for 2.5 seconds, that means nobody else actually went and watched the video. They just saw the thing posted and were like, aliens, any of these, this is even the Christian truthers saying demons are coming. The demons are coming.
Aaron, you're missing the point, dude. The whole point is the aliens appeared to us as the Goodyear blimp so that we wouldn't be suspicious.
Is that what it is? So it's the fallen angel disguised as aliens, disguised as the Goodyear blimp. So yeah. It truly is the great deception.
We're giving them all good ideas, man.
I just want people to realize they're testing us with this kind of stuff. You don't think the person that's in control of that UFO website knew that was the Goodyear blimp, but they put that out on the internet because they knew people would share it, because this year nobody would question it. If aliens showed up right now, they'd be like, well, that's 2020. Right? I mean, that's what they've literally done to us. That's the trauma they've put on us for this year.
What's the video that Rob just put out? Destroying I don't know, something about the ball deception, right? Well, anyways, you brought up the fact that the alien, everybody's calling aliens, the alien invasion 2020, right? Guys, we're still a ways off from the alien invasion. That doesn't mean we won't see fake alien stuff or whatever we see in the sky, right? I myself have seen crazy things in the sky.
That will be more of a Messiah thing that will come.
Well, I mean, I've seen things in the sky too, and I can't tell you what it was. So, it's one of those things. One of them, the biggest event, happened at the Take on the World conference in the Great Lakes up there in the water, and I don't know what that was. I don't think it was natural by any means, but I don't know what it was. But I'm not saying like they're here or anything like that. They're always here. You've always been had an ability to see into the spirit realm at some point. Sometimes the veils are thinner in places, right? But what I was saying is they've told us the plan. So, this is actually good. It actually dovetails into this. So we talked about the black flame, the Nazi black flame, right? That's the SS, right? The Nazi SS, they were occultists. They were a satanic cult They followed the teaching of the White Brotherhood and Madame Blavatsky. That's a key name. She wrote a book called man, I do this every single time. What is the name of that book?
The hierarchy.
Something hierarchy, right?
I'll pull it up. Go ahead.
Every time. Anyways, in her book, from the externalization of the hierarchy.
There you go. You got it.
In 1917, they tried to do this big ritual to raise the vibration of the consciousness on the massive global scale, right? This is leading up to and during the World War I, where the loss of life and all that stuff is being fed into the rituals and stuff. And they said in their little circles, if this didn't come to pass then, because of the cycles that we were on as far as celestial timing and everything, that they would have another opportunity in exactly 100 years. And we're looking at the start of all this chaos in right around 2017, 2018, 2016 with the election of Trump. I mean, the world is not the same right now, but we are currently going through the biggest, sorcerer battle that we've seen in a long time on the surface, man. And I mean, we're seeing it. And there's a reason that the black flame. So what I was going to say about the alien invasion and the black flame is, what's the dude found at NASA? Von Braun. Okay. Walter von Braun. He had a secretary or an assistant in his lab at JPL. With JPL is Jet Propulsion Laboratories with
Jack Parsons.
And I can't remember this lady's name. You can find her online if you just type it in and search out who this person was. But Rob Skiba put it in his video, and it's really well done. It's a short video, but it gets right to the point. And it has her talking about these stages. And like on his deathbed, he was confessing to her that, the way they would try to manipulate this society to get the New World Order or to do whatever. He was saying that first they would use the communists as the threat, the Red Scare, the communist threat. Then they would move from that into the terrorist threat. There'd be terrorism. Then it would be global climate change and weather stuff like asteroids. Then it would be alien invasion, false alien invasion. And he said the thing was, all of them are lies. Okay? And this goes back to the one thing, biblical cosmology. Where are we? Who are we? And what the heck is going on and what's being hidden from us, right? That really matters. And it's interesting that after he makes this deathbed confession, he puts on his tombstone, is it Psalm 90 or Psalm 19? Psalm 19:1, where it says
firmament.
Yeah, it says the heavens declare your handiwork and the firmament your workmanship or something like that. Something about the firmament, man, right there. The heavens display your glory and the firmament showeth your handiwork or something like that. But, I think, guys, he's pretty much painting the picture for you. He didn't come out and say it, but he's painting the picture or being lied to, right? And it's key to understanding all this stuff, right? What I'm trying to get at here is, even though all this stuff is happening all around us and we can say, yeah, it's witchcraft or this is demonic, we're watching a fake virus ravage our world and we're all willing to wear masks to save each other, right? And it's an illusion. The masks aren't doing anything. It's an illusion. It's a feedback loop. You feel good about wearing a mask, so you feel like you've done enough. Isn't it enough that I wear a mask now? No, it's not enough, because here's the thing. It's masking the fact that there has been a virus since the dawn of creation or the fall of man that has been ravaging and destroying families and everyone around you, those that you love. And it's called the sin virus. And it's right there. It's not visible. It's the invisible threat that everyone's not talking about right now, that the body of Christ should be talking about, because it's killing everyone. all the time and always has been. And yet we acknowledge that it's there because we are the only ones with the authority to do something about it. Right. And you remember that story where the beggar, or he's a leper or something, he wanders up to Jesus and he's trying to chase Jesus in that crowd, and he's outside the gates, and he says, he's yelling out to him, "You passed me, but I know that you could heal me if you wanted to." Right? And Jesus hears him, turns around and says, "I want to be made whole." Right? But it's like, man, we have that authority right now. We're watching people all around us with spiritual leprosy all over them. It's just destroying their bodies, their families, their generational, their lineage. Everything is just in this invisible destruction cloud over them. And we could help them if we wanted to. But because of our comfort level and the way that we want to just have this easy, comfortable life where we, tone out to everything, all the wickedness around us, and we set ourselves apart from the world, and we're misusing that verse big time. It says to be in the world, not of the world. Right? We're not of them.
That would make it really easy if we could just, withdraw from everything. Take away all of the temptation, and flee into the woods and get away from everything and hide from everybody, and not have to deal with other people, not have to deal with social media, the government, all of that kind of stuff, and make it super easy, right? To just go live and walk in the forest with God. I mean, it sounds great, right? Except that God has trusted us with people around us, family members, friends, stuff like I'm seeing a lot of people that have talked about exodusing social media platforms. And for some people, don't get me wrong, if God's calling you to do something, somebody brought up Nathan Reynolds, that Nathan Reynolds went off the grid. And there are certain people, Nathan had to go off the grid because of everything that he was coming out and exposing. They were coming after him. So that was something that he had to do. He had to take his family and basically go on the road. So some people are called to do that because, there has to be people that are going to be foundationally building up communities and stuff like that. So don't let us convince you if God's asked you to do something to do different. We're just saying in general, we need to be obedient to what God's called us to do. And what God has asked us to do is to be light to those people that God has entrusted us to be a part of. If we went off the grid, there would be no more Sitrep. There would be no more us reaching out and having conversations with people on social media. If we just left that, then that'd be a vacancy that who knows is going to fill. And that's one of the things that we're concerned with is when we see this stuff that they do this stuff to scare you. And that's the thing is we're supposed to be fearless and vigilant and taking on the enemy when he's trying to attack us. And they sent out this thing saying that in October, they're going to start doing all this and they're going to change social media. And people really started flying off the handle, like Truther community and the Christian community say, wow, well, I'm just going to bail and we're going to go somewhere else. That's exactly what they want. They want us off of primary social platforms because then they don't have to monitor us anymore. They don't have to use bots and fact checkers and all this other kind of stuff. And they can divert funds and attention to where they want to, which is propaganda. So without us there, who's going to tell them the truth? Because there's not going to be anything but people spreading lies. We already see that in the truther communities as it stands. If there's nobody to stand against that because we all flee from it, then everyone's just going to get deceived. And it takes work. We can't just walk away and take the easy route. God said this wasn't going to be an easy road, that people are going to hate us, that if they hated him first, they're going to hate us. So we have to understand that what we're called to do is not easy. It's not fun all the time. Usually it's humbling and it goes against everything ourself wants to do. And, myself wants to flee from all of this wickedness, just like I know Ian does. We just want to get away from it and go hang out with our, little community of, believing Christians and live happily in the woods. If that were possible to do right now, we would do so. But God's called us to do something else. There'll be a time for that. We have a millennial reign where we're going to be.
Yeah, check this out. How many of you guys would be willing to do what you're doing on Facebook or broadcast or whatever you guys are doing out there? Your message that you feel that God's called you to bring, right? If you were doing it like we've seen those post-apocalyptic shows where you're alone for 9 or 10 months after the apocalypse or whatever, some mass event where everybody's dead, right? And you're just every day, 3 times a day on the radio, broadcasting something, right? Like, hey, if you're out there, keep going. Here's my location. You can do it. Get here, right? You're pumping up whoever, even though you have no idea if anyone's ever heard that message, right? And you do it 3 times a day, out of hope that somebody's getting it. But you have no way to know anybody's getting it unless somebody makes it to you, right? I mean, I think about stuff like that all the time. And like, would I do this if I couldn't see people reacting? I'm watching the chat room. I know there's people watching this, right? I know they're lying about views. I know they're lying about all that stuff. No one can get a real number on who's actually being affected or even receiving this show. It's not about that. I don't care about that. Sometimes my flesh wants to care more. And like, we feel like we should be getting, way more viewers than we do. But God knows. And he has everything in control. He knows who's supposed to get this and who's not, and I think a couple hundred people a week is good. It's like a mini little, if you thought about it being a sit rep, I mean, we're talking frontline soldiers, man. There's not many in these hardcore battle groups, you got SEAL teams. There's 6 guys, a couple SEAL teams, 12 guys, you know what I mean? And these are elite fighters, and maybe that's who we got here. We got elite fighters. But I want to read you something from an actual elite fighter, Jamie Walden, right? So this is our boy, man, and we got to get him back soon. But I saw this, and, man, it pumped me up today because then it fits with what we're saying. He posted on Facebook an awesome testimony from the Warrior Summit retreat this past week that he had. And this is some guy thanking Jamie for what he said to him and the motivation he gave him. And it's kind of going back and forth. He says here, I love your heart and I can see the Holy Spirit in you, man. And I was working this morning and I literally just started jumping up and down with joy and tears welling up when you said this. And he said, this is Jamie saying this to God. This is like a prayer. He says, woe is me. Why this? Why that? Why not this? Why not that? Like pretty much like, God, why is this happening to me? Why is this not happening to me? God, you said this. Why is this, your expectations and all that stuff. But he said, God said, boy, you better suck it up, Buttercup. And God is saying this to Jamie. Do you think that I'm holding something from you? I'm holding back something from you? Do you think that I'm not wise? Do you think that I don't love you? Do you think that I don't have your best interest in mind? Do you think that I'm going to leave you or forsake you? You don't trust me, do you? You must not think I'm good. You must not think that I'm all powerful. And Jamie says, what about my portion? And God says, boy, you better turn back into the scripture because I, the Lord, will be your portion. Other people get land. Other people get houses. Other people get stuff. But my servants don't. They get a portion like everyone else, but they don't get a portion like everyone else. They get my presence. And this guy is saying, that he and his wife suffered and they share in his battle of loss when it comes to never having what it seems that everybody else around them has, like houses, land, cars. They're financially strapped every day and they just barely scrape by. But the Lord always has a plan to get them out of whatever they're in. And he's always been their portion and he's always come through. And, when I read that, man, I was like telling my wife, we're sitting there across from each other. And I'm like, listen to this. And I read it to her and I'm like, man, we identify with that so much, man. And I feel like you can, when you can tell when you're part of the elite group, right? The covenant keepers, when that's your story, when stuff gets stripped from you, the comfort goes away, you start getting tested, right? And God is showing up and he's making you more and more uncomfortable every day. But he's teaching you all in the background and he never lets you go. He's always there at 11:59:59, like Rob Skiba said. And it's very uncomfortable. You do not get used to waiting till the very last minute to get things, especially in our culture. But man, he does not let you go. He keeps you. And that's where he wants you because, man, when all hell breaks loose here in the next few years, and we don't know how to prepare for that. I mean, there's really nothing you can do to prepare for when everything in your life falls apart and you're alone, or it seems that you're alone and you have zero ability to keep yourself floating, right? And that's when God steps in and he does his thing, right? And that's where he wants us, man. He wants us to be in this place like little kids where, even though it's lunchtime, they're not thinking about how they're going to buy lunch or whatever. They know that they're just going to walk in the door and there's going to be food on the table for mommy, or, they don't have to worry about the bills at all. They just know that when they get done playing, they're going to come inside and they're going to lay in their warm bed and go to sleep, and that's what God wants us to be there and to be prepared to do whatever he asks at any moment and know that he is for us. He doesn't have plans to harm us, man. He loves us and he wants us to succeed. He gives us like everything that we need to succeed. He's given us. And it's our job to read the word, and it's like the instruction manual, right? That's what Torah means. Instruction. So he's given us instructions to a abundant life, right? And if we take it serious, then we get to reap the benefit of his presence, having his presence with us. And that is, like when we talk about the end times and we talk about, really standing up. And you've seen these riots. If you look at every single apostle, their story ends terribly in the physical. Every one of them was persecuted and murdered pretty much, man, in a brutal way. It's like, are we prepared to go down like that? A lot of us want to go quietly or peacefully in our sleep, or, we're afraid of that. And that fear drives us to run like Jonah, right? But some of these guys, they were getting stoned and then getting back up and going back into the same town or mob that just stoned them. I would be, if I could get up, I've seen some videos of stonings, man. It ain't no joke. If you got up, I'd be walking the other way, there ain't no way. I'm not there yet. But man, it's like Jamie said before, though. You can tell when the new recruits come in and they're getting ready to go to war, they're scared to death. Once the bullets start flying, they're seasoned and they become comfortable in that, and they don't like to not be in that. They feel more comfortable. That's why these war fighters, these career warfighter guys, these SEALs and stuff, and they're in there for 20 some years, and they come out, they get depressed and they freak out, and they got to go do weird, crazy stunts like, diving off cliffs in freaking squirrel suits. And you know what I mean? They miss that edge of your seat thrill and rush and having the muscle memory kick in and all that stuff, that they miss that stuff. As a believer, have never been in a spiritual war setting where you're actually fighting, then you still have the jitters of never being there, right? You still have that recruit syndrome. You need to get on the front lines and go do something, because then you feel out of place when you're not doing it. You feel like, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done right, right? It's got to be us. We're the ones with the training and the ability to go in there and take. I don't know, man. I often think, like, if I was ever in a situation where I saw a mob drag someone out of their car and kick the crap out of them and be beating them and stuff, would I step in? Because we still have to debate that whole, if God doesn't call you, you can get hurt, right? Has he called us to step into every situation? There's like I don't know. It could go either way, right? I guess if you're there, maybe he did call you, but he doesn't want us to go looking for these things, right? But if we happen to be there and it manifests, we have the authority to deal with it. Now, what it looks like would be a lot different. Would you walk into that mob and get your own baseball bat and start cracking skulls? That's what you want to do. That'd be the easy thing to do. But what if God told you to go up there and help the man off the floor and pray? I don't know. I don't know, man. Warfare would look completely different than what our flesh would tell us that it wants to do, right? In the moment. Maybe if you're the one getting drug out of your car and beat, you should be praying and saying, I love you and forgive you for what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. Like, or would you fight back? I probably would fight back. I mean, it would be a serious battle between my fight or flight. You know what I mean? Like, my adrenaline would be kicking in. I'd be thinking, a lot of things in my flesh. But man, it's like when I watched that video about the underground church in Iran and those ladies that are just talking about, like, they don't own their bodies. Like, wherever God sends them, whatever happens to that body, it's not their choice. It's God's choice what happens to that body. They're just obedient. And they're thankful that they even have that God even chose them to put them there. Like we said that earlier, man, like when we were talking offline, it's like just to be able to die and just see his face, even if you don't go to heaven.
Yeah.
That moment when you see his face, it's like, man, it'd be, it'd be, I think we're both going to heaven, but I'm just saying, it's all worth it, man. When you get that reward at the end, and just the honor of being chosen and someone believing in you and all the things that you're guilty of being washed away, everything you've done is like filthy rags, we talked about that earlier, man. It's like, man, if we don't feed our spirit with the scriptures and the things like this, it's overwhelming to us. We need to stay on top of feeding our spirit. And I'm talking about cutting out a lot of stuff, man. I know a lot of people are now deleting Netflix and things, but I'm talking about TV, man. Can we delete TV? Can we delete, and I'm just spitballing here, can we delete secular music? Because it's not good for your spirit. Yeah, it's catchy, and there's really nothing wrong with some of the songs, but that's time you could be spending feeding your spirit with songs that are edifying, when you think about it. I don't know, trying to put life in perspective and put things in the proper order of importance. It seems like if we can't do it now, when are we ever going to do it? I mean, we're sitting at home. There's nothing going on. We might be about to go into another lockdown situation. If you guys don't remember, I know you guys remember, but a couple weeks ago, we made a prediction here on this show. We were talking about this asteroid threat, and we said the government has these plans for asteroids, right? And these cataclysmic events from space that are coming into this realm, into our solar system, and going to hit the Earth or affect the Earth and shift our poles and all this craziness, right? And bring about global warming and climate change and all these different things because man is ruining, the Earth, whatever. But that's always been part of their plan, right? To get us to believe that global warming is a thing and all this stuff is going to happen. But we're looking at, we made a prediction and we said that in this scenario, this role play that they were running, kind of like Event 201 with the pandemic, they're running this thing and they chose like not to mitigate it with weapons in space, but to let it come through. And they chose to evacuate the areas that were possibly impacted, right? And there are several of these asteroids coming through. One of the places that they were talking about evacuating was the lower half of California, or at least a portion of the left coast. We'll say that. I'm not for sure exactly where it was, but it was a large portion, and they decided to evacuate. And that seems stupid. I mean, I'm reading this plan. I'm like, that's like the dumbest thing. They sit there right before they pick that. They're like, we have a weapon that we can shoot a rod of God and blow this thing out of space, right? Or we can nuke something and move it over so it doesn't hit us, right? All these different things. But they're like, we're not going to do any of those. We're just going to let it come in. Like, what? Like, why the heck would you do that? But we're thinking, hey, if they say something about locking down or evacuating California, then we know that this whole COVID thing was a freaking plan, and that COVID, we all know COVID's not the real thing. This is just a lot better than they thought. But we know there's a plan B or a second part. We all think it might be the vaccine or something like that, but I'm thinking it's something like another cataclysmic event, like, that will 9/11 us as a society, right? Another super huge transition in the spirit realm that is ritual, right? And I think that it has to do with these asteroids. And I'm not saying they're real. I don't know what they are, right? But they can tell us they're asteroids, whatever they want to do, show us a picture of a crater. We're not going to know any different, right? The fact is, what they're saying is going to happen is that this thing's going to come in to the atmosphere, and as soon as it gets in here, it will blow up, and it will be like 2 nuclear bombs being detonated in the air at some point over the U.S., and that would be like the equivalent of an EMP, okay? But they're saying, there is a possibility that these smaller ones impact somewhere, and that's why they chose the evacuation thing. Now, my theory is, with the fires in California, they're never going to come out and say that this stuff's going to happen and they're trying to prepare for it, like in the movies when they're like, we're going to prepare for this giant tidal wave and all that stuff that they're doing in these deep impact movies and stuff. But there's a guy on YouTube that's showing Dutch Sense, or his name is Dutch Sense, and he has a channel on there. He's showing that he caught satellite footage of laser weapons being used to start these fires in California. And it's pretty daggone convincing, man. And I believe they're using that. It looks like they're using some type of wet laser weapon from a satellite to burn these things. They're burning like smiley faces and things into the map where these fires are 100 miles apart, all down the rim, and they're just strategically moving down the state, right, and east. And to me, this is like a good way to evacuate people without telling them what you're doing, because nobody's died in these fires. So they're doing a good job with evacuating and moving people, and there's a system in place. And if you were to try to convince the military to do this, they would be on board, because you tell them this greater threat's coming and they're doing a service to humankind for setting these fires. And they're like, hey, listen, you're burning their homes down, but we need them to leave. And the insurance will cover the homes. They're getting away with their lives. Everything will be fine. It's better that they live than die, right? So these soldiers, whoever's flying these drones, that would be all they need, right? Okay, we're doing really.
You know what I find funny about the fires is the way it's been propagated is it hits everybody's expectations, right? So if you're a part of one group that's like, say you're part of the leftist agenda, right? You look at it, you say global warming's caused this, right? And they've got articles that support that and say it's global warming. You come from the truther aspect. We've seen the dues. We've seen the direct energy weapon stuff that's happened, and you can point at it and say, look, we have video footage. We see this happening, blah, blah, blah. If you look at it from like a QAnon standpoint, they're looking at it and saying, see, it's Antifa is going and setting these fires. See, they've arrested some Antifa people. There's news articles about that. I think it's funny that no matter which way where you stand on it, they've given you a reason, that supports your theory on why the wildfires are happening. Have you noticed that at all?
Yeah. Like what's his name says right here in the comments here that they blamed Haley G, saying they blamed it on China and Russia. They did come out and say that. But, like I said before, they literally blame everybody else for doing the stuff that they're doing. I mean, it's every time.
That's another one of those confusion tactics. We don't have just the same thing with COVID. Put a mask on, don't put a mask on. Stand 6 feet apart, stand 20 feet apart. COVID comes through your toilet. I mean, they just keep piling these things on over and over and over again. So there's no legitimate answer. There's no legitimate truth. And nobody can really argue and win the argument because everybody has their own perspective. It's like that little photo of the guy with this two guys standing across from the letter 9 or 6. And depending on their perspective, they're both arguing and saying, no, my perspective is right. No, my perspective is right. This is how they divide us. This is one of the oldest battle tactics. It's in the Art of War, the Chinese Book of War. It's divide and conquer. And they give us all of the tools to hang ourselves, to sit there and spew arguments left and right and up and down and sideways, and then we can't unite. And that's one of the things that I keep seeing over and over and over again. Doesn't matter where your indoctrination is coming from, it's still coming. And they give you all of the tools you need to say, oh, well, no, I'm right because of this article, or my news channel said this, while somebody else who's on the other side saying, well, my news channel said this. And it all is supported, and there's no truth to any of it. That's what's scary. So
yeah, they're launching all kinds of rockets up into space right now. That's what they're saying. But here's the other thing. All these observatories that they're saying that normally people would look and see these things. These asteroids, there's like 3 of them that are supposed to hit. They just found them. Like some of the ones that are coming close to us now, supposedly, they found in like 2011, 2012. But the rest of them, here's what they said. This is something funny too. They said the ones that we've previously seen that are numbered, is like SB12 and SEV13 or whatever these other ones are. We found them earlier, and they were coming at us from the front. These are coming at us from the rear, and we didn't see them until just now. What the heck does that even mean?
It's 2020, man.
Yeah,
We've all been taking it.
How is an asteroid coming at the Earth from the rear? Unless that's like another coded message, like we're giving it to you from behind.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it's
what I'm saying? And they said during the COVID pandemic, all the major observatories are closed. So who's seeing them? They literally have said the observatories are closed. 2 of them were attacked, and they have to be like some stuff has to be done to them, but the other ones were just closed. And so I just think it's funny, right? That they're, and the EAU or whoever it is, the ESA or European Space Agency or whoever they are, they scrubbed all the data from all these, so you don't know. But I'm serious, man. Like if we we talked about if we heard them saying they were evacuating California, then we would know that there's a good possibility that they've tricked Trump into believing that there's something about to hit the Earth. And you know what I mean? He's just a man. And if they can just, trick him into thinking there's an outside threat, that's going to wipe out a lot of people, he would do something to save people. And so we can all be deceived. And I just think we need to pray for him, pray that he gets the right people around him, speak some truth, and pray for all of us with the truth to get platforms to be able to speak the truth and actually reach more people. But man, it's crazy. It's crazy. And I think it's a possibility that I saw the other day on Israeli Times, Israel's about to go on a mandatory lockdown for COVID. Apparently their numbers have got higher than they've ever been. At least that's what they're saying. And they're going to mandatory lockdown for like 2 or 3 weeks starting this weekend. But look, man, we were all locked down during Passover. Now we're going to be locked down possibly for the next series of feasts. Is that a coincidence? Is God trying to send us another message? I don't know, man. It's really weird. I know I'm still doing Sukkot, and people are still going to break the law and come here. But the thing about the Israeli lockdown, they were saying that they're using technology to make sure that no one is allowed to go 500 feet from their residence during this lockdown.
That means they're tracking their phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's crazy, man. And, think about this too. Why would they be burning the cities down, the West Coast down and everything? And also we're talking about the housing markets are really good right now. The interest rates are low. Everybody's talking about how it's so good, but we're actually in the middle of a reset and we're going to lose our currency. Like the entire thing's going to collapse by January. We'll be living in a whole nother world. Digital currency, all kinds of crazy stuff's going to happen, right? They're still in this illusion though, that there's something good can come from this. But when you look at the UN Agenda 2030, they're talking about how they're going to have rewilding zones and most of the populations will be relocated to the cities. And we were talking about this earlier. Bezos is buying up huge blocks and, of area in DC or not DC, in New York City. So like 40 and 50% in New York City, the downtown real estate, as far as shops and stuff, are not coming back, and they're gone. They just can't afford it, right? So they're selling, and all these big corporations are buying up all the land inside the cities. And, that's the next phase, the technological revolution phase, where they incorporate all this new technology into their structures that they build. And the infrastructure of the downtown scene going to drastically change and upgraded to Judge Dredd style,
Well, I said that from the very beginning of Minneapolis, Minnesota, when that was all burning. I said it would be real interesting to see if they came back in after that and they used that as a flagship city for these new smart cities. And knowing that Jeff Bezos is buying, I don't know if you guys remember the interview. It's hard to find now, but of what Jeff Bezos' plan for the world would be if he was in charge. And it was basically that he would have us all living in these cubicle style 200 square foot, what looked like, trailers on the back of a semi stacked on top of each other, living in these. I mean, it reminded me of like I don't know if you guys remember The Fifth Element, the apartments in The Fifth Element. Yeah.
That's wild. And the flying cars, and they're going down. I remember watching that movie and being like, holy crap, he's a taxi cab driver, right? Or something.
Yeah.
And you're like, as he's driving like down levels and everywhere, I'm like, man, this is nuts. We can't even let our 16-year-old flipped her car 2 weeks after having it. And then this is the new world where I don't even worry about
AI controlled though. That it'll all be AI controlled. Everything. That's why they need to roll.
Yeah, that ain't gonna work out for us, man. You know what AI is? That ain't gonna work out for us. The AI will be constantly crashing us into stuff or dumping us out. The doors will open on a big turn. We'll be getting thrown around.
That's why they need the 5G. I've been telling people that everybody was worried about 5G creating coronavirus and all this and that. I'm like, no, they need this to roll out this dystopian type future. But it's going to look amazing to the people who are blind and can't see it. But remember, the scriptures say, it's when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction falls upon them. There's going to be a society, a buildup of a society that is going to look perfect. One world religion, one world monetary system, one world government system. And all of the majority of the people of the world will fall in line with this because it's going to look so good. So we have to understand this is what they've been doing to build up to this. All of this stuff has been a multi-pronged approach to getting this all accomplished while everybody is being, distracted by the smoke and the mirrors. They're building all the stuff behind our backs. And it's going to continue because we're looking in the wrong spots. They have literally, especially with AI, I think AI plays a big part in this and understanding the truthers is we've been on and so vocal in these truther communities that we put all of our ideas, all of our thoughts, all of our whatever on the internet for the AI to read. And they literally have mapped our thought processes out, and they literally know how to stop us in our tracks, in our investigation, in our study, because they counteract things before we even get the chance. There are things that come out that people have literally got conspiracy theories 5 minutes after something has happened. And there are memes and videos and all kinds of stuff that are coming. I'm like, how is this even happening? It's because it's staged the way that it's staged so that it throws the truther community to follow down a particular path. And you're following what the left hand's doing, but you're not watching what the right hand's doing. So we got to really be careful about all this stuff because it's going to continue. It's just like I just said with the whole blimp thing, with the everyone was posting about the alien stuff. We need to be so vigilant and so wrapped up in the idea of truth that we need to stop just pushing the share button on social media or telling people about stuff when we don't know the truth about it, because we're perpetuating lies at sometimes, and it's also making us foolish. That was something I want to talk about the social media stuff. Is we're set apart from this world. The people who are a part of this world are watching us though. And the things that we post, the things that we do, the things that we say around friends and family members, those people who are not believers are watching us. And if we're out there perpetuating lies, perpetuating obvious falsehoods, then how is that person? It's like teaching your kids about Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny. And then when they grow up and realize you lied to them, then you try to teach them about Jesus. How prone are your kids to believing you after you've already told them that Santa Claus, who got them all the cool gifts, and the Easter Bunny brought them candy, now you want to talk about a Jesus that walks on water?
Well, they want to tell them about Santa Claus knowing if you're good or bad, and he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake, and
Right.
you know what I mean.
Omnipotent, yeah.
And then when you try to tell them about Jesus, they say, "Oh, like Santa."
Yeah. So we have to watch. We have to watch that kind of stuff, guys. We got to watch perpetuating falsehoods. We need to be very in tune with the Holy Spirit and have our discernment on key, like it's just on point, because we need to be looking for these kind of things, and we need to step out to those that are falling into that stuff, and we need to be out there blocking the lies and then showing people truth. Because if we're out there perpetuating those lies, they're never going to believe us. The world's never going to believe us when we tell them the truth. So, try to be on point with that, guys, because this is just the beginning. I mean, we're talking about a great deception that says that if it were possible, even the elect would be deceived. So we got to be a part of that.
They're wrapping up now the social credit scores in with all this contact tracing and the vaccine immunization records, and all that stuff's getting rolled up together, guys. It's going to be real bad news, man. And we're not fearful of it. We know it's coming. We're trying to make sure that we have every opportunity to share the gospel on these platforms and make a real difference, right? I'm not talking about memeing and change or anything, but I'm talking about the ability to connect with each other, whatever that looks like for you, right?
Well, I've talked about this several times, not to cut you off, but you brought up a good point. With all of the stuff that's changing, with the onslaught of deep fakes and all this other stuff or whatever, they have the ability and the power with all of our information and stuff that's on the internet, whatever. I would hope that my actions towards friends and family members and to you you who view out there, that if they came out and said, so-and-so or Aaron Sampson is a racist because we recorded him saying this, this, and this, and it goes completely against everything that I have put out there and shown you guys, I would hope people would stand up and say, you know what? No, I've known that guy. I don't know how many people I've seen their lives destroyed because of fake and false accusations. That's going to be coming for us. This says that they're going to hate us. So lies are going to come with the hate and stuff. We need to be living life.
What they do now, all they got to do now is tell you that somebody was found with child porn on their computer.
Oh yeah, because
you're destroyed. People don't even tolerate that at all. They're like, "What a sick bee," It's like, man, you don't even know if it's true or not. They just told you it was. We don't trust people for any information at all, except for when they tell us that our friend was watching child porn. Then you're like, "Oh man," you know what I mean? It's like, man, we gotta be better, guys. We gotta be better.
Yeah, that is kind of scary. That is a possibility that they can use. I've seen they did that with all of the the shooters and stuff like that. You stop and investigate as soon as you find out.
Even the brothers. I mean, the people that come out on their behalf and say, hey, I don't know, his character wasn't like that. I can't see how he would do that. Next thing you know, that guy's got child porn on his computer.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's nuts, man. It's like the thing.
They tried to do that with that girl who brought out that movie. Shadowgate. She had was trying to send her email child porn and was literally blatant about it. They found it when they were doing the investigation. So man, they're trying hardcore because they want to shut everybody down. So we have to be completely vigilant, guys, and we got to be on top of everything.
Yep.
So
all right, guys,
we're at the top of the hour.
We're at the top of the hour, guys. We're gonna break it for this week, and thanks so much for hanging out with us. Look forward to putting this podcast out there, and that'll be just another way for you guys to share this out and get it out there. I want to close with some prayer real quick and leave it on a good note. But dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the ability to be able to get online and network with your people and sharpen each other, lift each other up, and bear each other's burdens. Father, we thank you for the encouragement that comes through reading your scripture, your words, and knowing you in a relationship, and that you never leave us and forsake us, and that you have only good things planned for us. You've given us everything we need to prosper. And Lord, we pray that you would help us to be conscious with the decisions that we are making in our life, and very intentional about the purpose and the drive and the focus that we are walking out in our communities and in our families and whatever role that you have given us. Lord, we know that You want us to make a difference, and we have the ability to change lives and bring hope to a lost and hopeless generation. Lord, you make messy things beautiful. We thank you for your grace and your mercy, and we ask you to keep everyone safe. And Lord, we bind up the spirits behind the algorithms that would suppress this information from going out. In Jesus' name, we see you guys next week.